Imagine this. You're standing in a beach house at night, the wind howling through the dunes, the ocean whispering outside the window. The place is supposed to feel like paradise, a safe retreat where families laugh in the summer sun. But when the laughter fades and silence creeps in, the walls begin to feel different. You hear a faint sound from the closet, a muffled thump. Your chest tightens. You convince yourself it's nothing until the door slowly creaks open and a shadow steps out, watching you as you lie frozen in bed. The nightmare isn't in your head. It's real, and it's standing just a few feet away. And that's only the beginning. Across these stories, strangers hide inside locked homes. Mysterious devices are planted beneath pillows, and girls are lured into what seems like harmless funonly to face unimaginable horror. Welcome to The Price Paid, where true terror takes shape. Subscribe now, because the next story might just be the one that makes you check every closet, every window, and every lock before you sleep tonight. It was one of those strange transitions in life, the kind of time when you don't really know who you are or what you're supposed to be doing. I had just graduated early, months before my job was supposed to begin, and while at first the idea of endless free time sounded like a gift, it quickly turned sour. The long empty days dragged on, leaving me restless, unproductive, and unsettled. So when my mom asked me to check on my Uncle Rick's beach house, I said yes without hesitation. A simple favor, a small responsibility, something to make me feel useful. The drive from Pennsylvania down to Delaware was only a couple hours. I figured it would be easy, maybe even a nice little break from the monotony. The house was massive, built to host sprawling family gatherings every summer. I remember the chaos of those weeks, cousins arguing over board games, relatives laughing too loudly after too many drinks. The air always felt electric with noise and life. But when I arrived that afternoon, the silence was crushing. There were no voices, no clutter, just empty rooms echoing back my footsteps. It's unnerving to stand inside a place that's supposed to be bursting with energy and find it stripped down to stillness. The walls themselves seemed to hum with absence. I went through Rick's checklist like I was supposed to: check the faucets, flip breakers, inspected the property. Everything seemed fine, yet the deeper I walked into the house, the more wrong it felt. By the time the sun began to sink, painting long shadows through the tall grass outside, I didn't feel like driving back. I texted my mom that I'd stay the night, and she agreed it was the smarter choice. I thought that having the house to myself might even feel like a luxury. I cooked a simple meal, scrolled through my phone, then wandered into the master bedroom, a room I'd never had the privilege to sleep in before. The bed was enormous, the closet like its own small chamber, the private bathroom gleaming. For once, I didn't have to cram into a tiny third-floor guest room. I told myself I deserved it. I fell asleep around midnight. At first, I thought the noise that woke me was part of a dream, a faint clatter, like something falling inside the closet. My eyes snapped open, my heart racing, though my body refused to move. It wasn't exactly sleep paralysis, but it felt close-mind awake, limbs reluctant. I lay perfectly still, straining to hear. The silence stretched. Then, just as I was about to drift back into uneasy sleep, it came again. A muffled thump. This time I knew I hadn't imagined it. The air grew heavy, thick with dread. I told myself not to look, not to open my eyes wider, but I couldn't resist. Through a thin slit of vision, I watched the closet door creak open. A figure emerged, dark and shapeless in the dim light, and it moved with deliberate slowness toward my bed. It stopped beside me. I could feel the weight of its gaze, cold and unblinking. My breath caught in my throat. Seconds stretched into an eternity, each tick of my pounding heart louder than the last. Then, without a word, the figure turned and walked out. I listened to the floorboards groan under its weight as it made its way upstairs, not down. That meant it was headed to the third floor. There was no exit there, no escape. My stomach twisted. I wanted to believe it wasn't real, but the sound of those footsteps was undeniable. Somehow, I snapped free of the paralysis, reached for my phone, and dialed 911 in a whisper. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped the device. I locked the bedroom door and waited, each second dragging like hours. When the red and blue lights finally flashed through the windows, I nearly cried with relief. The officers rushed inside, sweeping the rooms with practiced efficiency. Minutes later, they returned to me, claiming the house was empty. Empty, as if the figure had evaporated into the air. I couldn't accept it. I had heard those steps go upstairs. There was nowhere else to go. My Uncle Rick was furious when I called, demanding they search again. This time, they combed through every closet, tapped on walls, peered under beds, pulled back shower curtains. And then they found something chilling. A third-floor bedroom window, the one in the room I would normally have been assigned, was unlocked. One officer went outside, scanning the property with a flashlight, and that's when the beam caught movement above. There he was, the intruder, perched on the roof like some grotesque bird, his bald head gleaming, his clothes filthy and torn. He looked hollow, as though he hadn't eaten or bathed in weeks, his eyes vacant and disturbing. My blood ran cold. They got him down, cuffed him, said he was probably homeless and squatting in the house. Maybe he'd been there for days, maybe longer. He never explained how he got inside or why he had been hiding in the closet. He just stared blankly, silent, as though none of it mattered. Watching him led away was surreal, like waking from a nightmare only to realize it had been real all along. The police assured me I was safe, but the thought that he had been in that closet, steps from where I slept, was unbearable. Worse still, had I chosen the third-floor room that night, the outcome might have been very different. That thought still keeps me awake sometimes, long after the case has been closed. Mike's family beach house was the kind of place that carried decades of memories in its walls. His grandparents had owned it, his parents maintained it, and now that no one lived there full-time, he had near unlimited access. To me, someone who didn't come from much, the house seemed like a palace. Every corner smelled faintly of salt air and old wood, that musty but oddly comforting perfume that clings to homes near the ocean. When Mike invited me to spend a weekend there, I jumped at the chance. A couple of days of relaxation sounded like exactly what I needed. We arrived late on a Friday evening, dropped our bags upstairs, grabbed sandwiches from a sub shop, and then wandered out to the beach. The night air was warm, and the ocean stretched endlessly dark, broken only by the glow of the moon on the waves. We cast fishing lines into the surf more for the peace of it than the catch, laughing when nothing bit. It was ordinary, almost idyllic. We even ran into two local girls, exchanged numbers, and carried on as if we were living out some casual summer cliche. That night, everything felt light, safe, and easy. The next day passed in a blur of boardwalk, runs, sun, and sand. We were exhausted by the time evening rolled around, so instead of venturing into noisy bars, we went to bed early. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet you sink into after a long day. But sometime after midnight, that peace was shattered. I woke to a sound that drilled straight into my skull. A sharp, high-pitched beeping, insistent and shrill. The kind of noise you'd expect from a smoke detector when the battery is dying, or worse, when something is on fire. At first I thought I was dreaming, but the sound wouldn't stop. I sat up, blinking in the dark, heart thudding as I realized it wasn't coming from my room. It seemed to echo from above me. Panic bloomed in my chest. I sprinted to Mike's room, shaking him awake. He followed me without hesitation, shirtless and half asleep, but alert enough to sense the urgency. Together we climbed the stairs to the third floor, lit only by a shaft of moonlight through the hall window. The sound was louder there, stabbing through the stillness. We flipped on the lights, expecting to see smoke, maybe a flickering lamp, anything to explain the alarm. But the rooms looked untouched. We searched frantically until finally, in one of the bedrooms, I found it. Hidden neatly beneath a pillow was a small black device, about the size of a walkie-talkie. It had no screen, no buttons, just a blinking red light and a simple switch. The sound was coming from it. I flicked the switch and the noise cut off instantly. The silence that followed was almost worse, thick and accusatory. Mike walked in just as I was holding it in my hand. His eyes locked onto mine, filled with confusion and fear. Neither of us had seen anything like it before. It wasn't a smoke detector. It wasn't any kind of normal household gadget. Someone had put it there, and someone had turned it on. The thought hit me with a weight I can't describe. If the device could only be activated manually, then someone else had been in the house. Maybe they still were. My skin prickled, as though unseen eyes were crawling over me. We barricaded Mike's bedroom door and called the police. Our voices hushed, like children afraid of waking a monster. The wait felt endless, but eventually flashing lights swept across the walls. The officers entered, and we hurried downstairs to meet them. We explained everything in shaky voices, showed them the device, begged them to check the house. They searched thoroughly, or at least it seemed so at the time. But when they returned, they told us nothing was out of place. No intruder, no signs of forced entry. We almost let ourselves believe it, until one of the officers called us back upstairs. Every single window on the third floor was open. Not just cracked, not just unlocked, but wide open, gaping like wounds. The air blew and cold, whipping the curtains into frantic shapes. And the rooms had been ransacked. Beds flipped, drawers overturned, belongings scattered across the floor. I felt sick. When Mike and I had searched earlier, everything had been in order. Whoever did this had been there while we were in the house. The officers found no one, no fingerprints, no weapons. They told us to secure the windows, lock up, and call again if anything else happened. Then they left, just like that, as if what had just unfolded was nothing more than a minor disturbance. But the reality was crushing. Someone had been inside with us, moving silently through those rooms, watching, waiting. Maybe they were still close by, slipping out when the police arrived. That night, we sat in silence, too afraid to sleep.
Hello there.
Every creak of the house amplified into a threat.
Hi.
I couldn't stop replaying the moment I found that device beneath the pillow. The realization that it had been placed there deliberately. It wasn't just an intruder, it was a message. A signal. Proof that the house wasn't truly ours that night. Morning came eventually, but it brought no comfort. We left the house, shaken and haunted, knowing we'd never get real answers. To this day, I wonder who planted that thing and why. Was it a prank, or was it something much darker? The truth is, we'll probably never know. I was 22 when it happened, young enough to feel invincible, but old enough to believe I had control over my life. After graduating, I had moved back into my childhood home with my parents, saving money and enjoying the comfort of a roof I didn't have to pay for. My life was predictable in the best way.
No.
I worked, went to the gym, read before bed,
Please, no.
and spent weekends hiking or taking small road trips. I wasn't a party girl. I didn't drink to excess, I didn't waste nights in clubs, and I certainly didn't let men dictate the course of my days. That was who I was, or at least who I thought I was, until that one weekend. My closest friend from college, Lindsay, invited me and two others, Sabrina and Theato, her family's beach house. She had told us countless times about the place, how it was private, quiet, almost like its own little fortress tucked away from the chaos of tourists. Her parents were neurosurgeons, wealthy enough to build a home that looked more like a modern compound than a summer getaway. When I first saw it, my jaw dropped. Sharp angles of glass and steel, secluded behind gates in its own stretch of sand, the kind of place you expect to see in magazines. Inside, every detail was polished, every room designed to impress. It felt less like a house and more like a stage where something bigger was bound to happen. The four of us claimed a kid's room with bunk beds. Even though there were more than enough bedrooms to spread out, we wanted to be together, to make it feel like a sleepover. That first night we grabbed drinks and headed down to the private beach. The waves hissed against the sand, stars stretched endlessly above us, and Sabrina played music on a small speaker. We were laughing, toasting with cans of seltzer, when we noticed lights flickering in the distance. At first it seemed harmless,
Lindsay,
maybe fishermen,
what happened?
but the longer we watched, the clearer it became. Flashlights swaying, laughter carrying over the sand. 3 figures walking closer. They called out as they approached, voices friendly. Young men, maybe a little older than us. By the time they reached us, the tension had melted away. They looked like typical beach guys, sun-bleached hair, tanned skin, and easy grins. Thea's eyes lit up immediately. She was always drawn to excitement. They cracked open beers, sat with us, and soon it felt like we were all just kids killing time under the stars. An hour later, after more drinks and more laughter, the men invited us back to where they were staying. I was exhausted, not interested in prolonging the night, and told the others I'd head back. They wanted to keep going, especially Thea, so I left them, assuming it was harmless. The walk back to the house was quiet, the dunes whispering in the wind. I washed up, climbed into the bunk bed, and fell asleep without much thought. Sometime around 3 a.m, my phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. It was a FaceTime call from Lindsay. Groggy, I answered, only to hear her screaming. Her voice was frantic, broken by sobs and gasps. She told me Thea and Sabrina had been taken, forced into a car by the men. The words slammed into me like a physical blow. My stomach lurched as I pulled on clothes with shaking hands. She had already called the police, she assured me, but she needed me to help her chase them. She stayed on the line, guiding me through her family security gate, telling me which car was hers, which direction the kidnappers had gone. I don't remember fastening my seatbelt. I only remember the terror clawing at my chest as I sped down the coastal road in the dead of night. The streets were empty, just me, the occasional flicker of a streetlight, and the roar of the engine. Minutes later, I spotted the SUV she described, taillights glowing like the eyes of a predator in the dark. I hung up and dialed the police, giving them my location, whispering details as though the men could somehow hear me. The dispatcher told me to keep my distance, so I followed, every nerve on fire, watching that vehicle inch along the road like it had all the time in the world. Then the flashing lights appeared ahead. Red and blue streaks tore through the night. The SUV slowed but didn't try to flee. Maybe the men thought it was a coincidence, just another traffic stop. But the officers were already moving with purpose. I pulled over and watched, heart pounding, as police yanked open doors, dragged the men out at gunpoint, and cuffed them on the side of the road. One officer opened the trunk, and my breath caught in my throat. Thea and Sabrina were there, bound, bruised, terrified. Relief hit me like a tidal wave, but it was tangled with horror. The scene felt unreal, like something from a movie I had never wanted to see. Later, Lindsay filled in the details. She had left the house the men claimed as theirs, arguing with one who grew angry when she refused to stay. She realized she had forgotten her purse and doubled back, only to witness the other two shoving our friends into the SUV. She called the police, then me, desperate for help. The truth unraveled quickly. The house the men were staying in didn't belong to them at all. It was owned by an elderly couple away on vacation. The men had been squatting there, lying in wait, weaving their trap. With the testimony of my friends and the weight of the charges, they were sentenced to long prison terms. Thea's parents, both lawyers, ensured justice was swift, but no sentence felt long enough. The aftermath was brutal. For weeks, I couldn't sleep without jolting awake. Thea and Sabrina carried scars you couldn't see, shadows behind their eyes. I avoided beaches, strangers, even casual conversations with men. My social life shrank. My trust fractured. It took years to piece myself back together. And even now, when I stand on a quiet stretch of sand at night, I can hear the echo of Lindsay's screams through the phone, warning me that safety is never guaranteed. The stories never really leave you. People like to believe fear fades, that nightmares dissolve when the sun comes up, and that the human mind is quick to heal once danger is past. But it does not work that way. Fear lingers like smoke after a fire, seeping into everything you do. For the people who live these nights inside beach houses that should have been safe havens, the trauma left a mark that would not wash away with the tides. The man who found a stranger stepping out of the closet in his uncle's house could not look at that property the same again. For years, his family had packed those rooms with laughter, board games, and too much wine. But after that night, every corner of the place seemed altered. Even though police arrested the intruder, the memory of waking in the dark, paralyzed as a shadow stood silently beside his bed, was stronger than any reassurance. The thought that the man had been living in the house, perhaps days or weeks, watching quietly while the family had celebrated summers together, was unbearable. His uncle refused to install security systems, claiming it was unnecessary, but everyone else in the family knew better. They started locking their doors more tightly, checking every window, never assuming that walls and locks were enough to keep the unknown outside. Mike and his friend had their own ghost to wrestle with, discovering a strange black device hidden beneath the pillow, realizing it had been planted deliberately, shattered the illusion that the beach house was only theirs. Even after the police brushed off the incident and told them to secure the windows, the experience haunted them. Nights felt different afterward. A creak of the floorboards became an alarm bell. A sudden silence turned into suspicion. They kept replaying the moment they flicked the switch and heard that shrill beeping, imagining unseen hands placing it there earlier, maybe while they had been walking on the beach, maybe while they had been laughing downstairs. The violation was not just physical but psychological. Once you realize that someone has been inside your private space without your knowledge, the safety you thought you had is gone. For the girls at Lindsay's family beach house, the aftermath was even darker. The kidnapping attempt was something you could not dismiss as coincidence or misunderstanding. It was calculated, intentional, and terrifyingly close to ending in tragedy. Lindsay, who had only wanted her friends to enjoy the sanctuary of her family's home, carried guilt that was not hers to bear. She replayed the decision to go back for her purse, realizing that if she had not turned around at that exact moment, she might never have known what happened to her friends. Thea and Sabrina, though rescued, bore invisible scars. They did not talk about it often, but the silence itself said enough. Trust was fractured. Nights out no longer felt safe. Even casual walks on the beach were tainted by memory. The common thread in all of these stories is the sense of betrayal by the environment. A beach house is supposed to symbolize escape, relaxation, and safety. It is where families gather to bond, where couples dream of quiet weekends, where friends go to chase freedom. But beneath that facade lies vulnerability. The houses are often isolated, left empty for months, surrounded by dunes and shadows. They become the perfect hiding places for people who have nowhere else to go, or worse, for people seeking to harm. The ocean masks noises. The wind carries away cries for help. And by the time you realize something is wrong, you are already trapped. The lessons are as chilling as the events themselves. Lock every window, not just the doors. Do not assume silence means safety. Trust instincts when something feels off. Do not ignore strange noises, misplaced objects, or the unsettling sense of being watched. Always have an escape plan, and never hesitate to call for help, even if you fear it might turn out to be nothing. It is better to feel foolish for overreacting than to be unprepared when the threat is real. These survivors carry the burden of what they experienced, but they also carry warnings for anyone willing to listen. The young man who almost slept in the wrong room tells a story, not for sympathy, but as a reminder that one decision can alter everything. Mike and his friend share their encounter with the device, so others understand how fragile privacy can be. Lindsay and her friends relive the horror, so no one else makes the mistake of trusting strangers too quickly. Each story underscores the same truth: safety is never guaranteed, not even in the places we cherish most. When you step into a beach house, you may feel the warmth of nostalgia or the thrill of freedom, but you should also feel a quiet caution. Remember the people who thought they were safe until a closet door creaked open, until a shrill beeping pierced the night, until headlights revealed friends bound and terrified in the trunk of a stranger's car. Their fear is a lesson, and their survival is proof that vigilance saves lives. And that is why we share these stories here. Not to glorify the horror, but to remind you that shadows sometimes hold more than just darkness. This is the price paid, where true terror finds its voice. If you value your safety, if you crave stories that remind you how fragile security really is, subscribe now. Because the next time you step into a beach house, you may remember these words, and you may be glad you did. The ocean has always been romanticized as a place of escape. People flock to the shore for peace, for family gatherings, for the illusion of safety that comes with sand and waves. But these three stories remind us that beauty can hide something much darker.
We'll do everything we can.
Each beach house, though different in design and location, became a stage for fear. They looked like sanctuaries from the outside, but once night fell and silence crept in, they revealed just how vulnerable we really are when we let our guard down. The young man who stayed at his uncle's house discovered this the hard way. What should have been a quiet night alone turned into a waking nightmare when a stranger emerged from the closet and stood silently by his bed. Even though the intruder was eventually caught, the haunting thought remained. How long had he been there? And what might have happened if the man had chosen a different room that night? Sometimes survival comes down to nothing more than luck. Mike and his friend learned a different kind of lesson. The mysterious black device they found under a pillow wasn't just an object. It was proof. Proof that someone else had been inside the house, moving unseen, planning a signal that turned their weekend escape into a twisted game. The police found nothing, but the open windows and ransacked rooms were undeniable. Their sense of ownership over the house was stolen, replaced with the terrifying knowledge that they had not been alone. And then there were the girls at Lindsay's beach house, whose night of laughter and drinks spiraled into horror. A casual encounter on the sand led to an attempted abduction, the kind of event that leaves permanent scars. They were saved only by timing, quick thinking, and the swift response of police. The outcome could have been devastatingly different. The story is more than a warning about strangers. It is a reminder that predators can appear in the most ordinary settings, dressed as friends, hiding behind easy smiles. All three of these stories converge on the same truth. Safety is fragile, and trust can be deadly. A locked door is not always protection. A quiet night does not guarantee peace. We must listen to our instincts, question the unusual, and take action when something feels wrong. Call for help. Double-check the locks. Stay aware of your surroundings. These are not signs of paranoia. They are survival tools. If you take anything from these stories, let it be this. Never assume you are alone simply because you want to believe you are safe. Darkness has a way of concealing more than shadows, and silence often carries the weight of something unseen. This is the price paid, where true horror speaks and survival is never guaranteed. Subscribe now, because the next story we share could be the one that keeps you alive when the night grows too quiet.